Hey everyone, Brandon Tyrell here. I'm joined by Brian Albert.
How's it going, everyone?
We're going to be talking about Battlefield Hardline today. You are currently in the process of reviewing
Correct,
it?
I'm IGN's reviewer.
You're IGN's reviewer.
Yes.
And this video will go up with your full thoughts.
Yeah, so what we're doing for games that have a heavy online multiplayer component is we're going to put up a review in progress with this video, this conversation that you're watching now. And then we're going to take up to 48 hours to test the servers. So we're going to play multiplayer on every console and on PC that Hardline is on.
Yep.
And then we will update the review in progress with the score and a full video review.
Cool. So let's get into it. You know, I've played a ton of multiplayer.
Yes.
Like just so much multiplayer.
Yeah. 2,000 hours, yeah.
Yeah. And so we could touch on that in a bit, but right now what I want to talk about is single player, right? I haven't touched this, so I'm really curious. Give me your thoughts on single player. Like, where did you land on it? Some are better than others in the Battlefield franchise.
Yeah, okay. I played single player for 3 and 4, and great, solid mechanics, good shooters.
Yeah.
I didn't really care what was happening in that game. I was there for the multiplayer.
Yeah.
And in Hardline, it's not the same. It's not that way.
Really?
This is a cops and robbers game. It's a really sort of typical story.
Yeah.
Like it's hey, big powerful man is in charge of like drug ring, right?
Oh, okay.
You've heard that before plenty of times. There's betrayal,
you've seen
whatever.
that.
Sure, but it's so well written and the characters are really interesting and good, and that's something I'm not really used to in a Battlefield game. That I wanted to keep playing to figure out what was going on with them. Like they're well written. I cared about them as people, and the humor isn't quite on the level of Bad Company. Where they were, constantly making like funny quips, and you're like, all right, these guys. These guys are good.
But it's in there.
Oh, there's good humor, and it's spread out. And it's really sparse, but when it comes in, it's really sharp, and really good. And you're like, you actually laugh out loud, and you're like, good, all right.
So you would say, so the writing is one of the stronger points in it.
Yeah, the writing, and this is not talking about the gameplay.
Sure.
The gameplay's great. The writing sort of saves the story from being
too cliche.
Yeah, exactly. Gotcha. To be like cop story with drugs.
Cool. Yeah. Well, then let's jump into the gameplay. Like, tell me about the gameplay elements of the single player that either worked for you or just, turned it all off.
Yeah. So, Hardline, and I say this in my review. I can't believe that I'm saying this. It plays just as well as a stealth game as it does as a shooter.
Really?
Which is not at all what I expected
for a Battlefield game.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're not forced into like, I'm taking this path or this path.
Yeah.
Pick a side.
You don't select action or stealth.
Exactly. You can do either. You can ignore one if you want. But basically, you have this tool to sort of scan the battlefield before you go in, and you capture all the enemies and the alarms and the explosives, and then they'll show up on your radar, and then you go in quietly, obviously, if you're going stealthy.
Right.
And you can sort of see their cones of vision.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's like one of those things where you like sort of a Metal Gear Solid where you watch the mini-map kind of thing?
Exactly. And by the way, those cones are very literal, so sometimes you're like, why don't you see me? You're not in the cone. So like, it's for gameplay.
You're like right on the cusp of it.
But you're like, can you not?
Standing in the hallway.
Exactly. But you sneak around and you can like knock people out and arrest them.
Right.
Or if you find 3 or fewer enemies together, you can like flash your badge and be like, yo, fools.
Oh, that's so awesome.
Freeze. And then one thing I don't quite get is sometimes they'll sort of get antsy and they'll like reach for their guns. I think it's if they outnumber you and like have bigger guns than you, they'll start to get antsy and fidgety.
There's like a psychological element there?
Yeah. And
have you figured out what exactly?
I haven't figured out exactly, but you point your gun at them and they're like, oh, okay, never mind, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can go around and like take out the entire like combat area, and when you're done, there's just like sleeping dudes everywhere. You have like 80 pairs of handcuffs that you just slap on everyone.
Like the zip tie things?
Yeah, you just like cuff them and then they like fall asleep.
Nice.
So that's actually, it's really satisfying. And then of course, I'm not perfect. Sometimes I mess up, and when I do, then I have to start shooting people, right?
Sure.
That's how Battlefield works.
So basically, stealth is the more risk-reward.
Yeah. And I do want to lead into that. I just want to point out that the shooting is still very good. The weapons look and sound great. The attachments are cool. Like if you want to shoot and play Battlefield, it's Battlefield still. You can totally fine. But you do get you have an expert level in campaign.
Okay.
And as you level up, you unlock more gadgets and weapons. And the best way to level up your expert level is by being stealthy and like handcuffing people who have warrants out. So, you're confused, right?
But then you unlock weapons.
Yeah. So by being really stealthy, you unlock bigger weapons. So that didn't really work for me.
There's no like reward system for like going the stealth route, you
Not
get
really,
more
like-
zip ties or whatever.
No. The only actual like stealth tool that you get is like a short range taser.
Oh,
and it's good because it's much quicker than knocking someone out instead of doing them. But that's about it. The stealth gameplay is fun. It's really rewarding to wipe out a whole area without shooting a bullet.
Yeah.
But the leveling up really helps people who want to shoot things. And then if you run in just guns blazing, you're not going to level up as quickly because you're not using stealth.
Yeah.
So you're not going to get those guns as quickly as the stealth person who doesn't need them. So that was a little strange.
Sort of
to me.
counterintuitive.
Yeah, a little bit. But no, that's really the main thing I wanted to point out is, you know, that system's a little backwards, but the shooting is good, the stealth is good,
stealth is good.
and the writing is good.
I mean, it sounds like a step in the right direction
Yes.
as far as single-player campaigns.
The only thing that also kind of bugs me about the story is, so the main villain is cool and he's sort of narcissistic, and the good example I found from
Sure.
the game is he has a bust of himself.
Nice.
And
Nice.
right, that's the start. And you like flip it up and the switch to his like secret vault is in there. So that's the kind of guy we're dealing with.
He's got a secret vault
He has
under
a
the
secret
head
vault
of
under
a-
his own bust.
Nice. All right.
There are these enemies who, I don't really know the best way to say this. It's like if you can imagine like an extremist, like the most extreme right wing,
like super conservative,
super Tea Party, but like way over the edge.
like a compound in the woods kind of thing.
Yeah, like
Right,
like
okay.
underground compound, you know, all that don't tread on me stuff. Not that that's bad on its own at all. That's not
Sure,
what I'm saying.
yeah.
But if you can imagine that sort of caricature,
Right.
there are like a bunch of enemies who are exactly that and literally nothing more.
super cliche.
Yeah, you meet them, you know, they're like, hey, you look like a Mexican, I bet you're a thief. You know,
Wow.
yeah, they point at you and say that. Like,
So casual racist.
yeah, it's just like the
All right.
most easy to hate enemies.
Yeah.
And like,
Which
maybe
works
the point,
for enemies,
maybe the
I
point is
guess.
like, hey, some people are like that. I don't know. It just doesn't feel very good
Right.
because other characters are really nuanced and well written, and these guys are just kind of,
filler.
yeah, like,
the packing peanuts of the enemies.
yeah. Like it's a cool side quest because you have to go get this like safe cracker, and
Yeah.
that's its own thing. That's neat. But the enemies are pretty simple, and it's not great.
But overall, it hit you. You liked the campaign?
Yeah, it's the best Battlefield campaign I've played since probably Bad Company 1. I really
Oh, wow.
like Bad Company 1. So,
Cool.
yeah.
I really enjoyed that one
Yeah,
too.
so don't skip on it. If you normally just play multiplayer, I wouldn't skip on it.
Cool. So changing gears into multiplayer, something I can actually add to now.
Yeah.
So you and I have both played multiplayer,
Right.
lots of it. I guess let's just go big picture, like thoughts overall, and then we'll start sort of dissecting it real quick.
So the thing that impressed me the most about the multiplayer is that there's actually something for everyone.
Yeah.
And sometimes you do that and you don't really do anything well.
Sure.
'Cause you
Yeah,
wanna
like
appeal
you
to
try to
everybody.
diversify too much, and you
Right.
end up not being able to specialize in one thing.
That didn't happen here somehow.
Right.
So when I think of like classic Battlefield, it's conquest mode.
Right.
Big open, capture the territories.
32 versus 32.
Yeah, vehicles.
Yeah,
like
tanks,
that's, and that's
jets.
still here.
Yeah.
That's not sort of what like the game was marketed for.
Sure.
That's still there though. And
Yeah.
it's really good stuff.
Minus the tanks and jets, but
Yeah. There's no, now you have like SWAT or like
You
muscle
have-
car cruisers and
yeah, you have the same vehicles, but they're very. I mean, they're centered around cops and
They're pretty
criminals, but
urban.
they're very well equipped cops and criminals.
Yes,
like,
it's kind of ridiculous, but it's funny.
like paramilitary status.
right. So as I was saying, so Conquest is there. The big premier new mode is Hotwire.
Yeah,
Which is sort of,
I love.
me too. I didn't like it at first, and I'll explain why.
Yeah.
Basically, it's sort of like Conquest, but the capture points are vehicles that you have to drive at a certain speed to get points.
Go ahead.
Speed.
It's
It's
speed.
the movie
It's
Speed,
Yeah.
gamified. It's
so
really cool.
Basically, it's conquest and speed. You got to get up to what, like the top of your odometer or your speedometer, and then once you do that, the point is captured, and whoever holds the most cars that are captured currently, they get the majority of
Exactly.
the tickets.
So the way I play shooters, not a camper. I'm not a camper. I hate this. I hate this so much. I patrol an area.
I was watching your gameplay.
I lock down an area
You
and I
do.
stay there.
And he does
That
lock
doesn't
it
really
down.
work in Hotwire
No, it
because you
doesn't.
need to follow the objectives. Or like if you're in a place that seems safe,
Yeah.
suddenly there's like helicopters and cars around
Yeah.
you, and it's now the middle of the war zone.
Like things just explode random. And I'm not saying like explosions like fires, but like action breaks out where you're alone and
Exactly.
suddenly you're not.
Like I'm sniping, no one's gonna find me. Suddenly a rocket. It's ridiculous.
yeah, a sports
I like
car like
it. It-
swings up.
Yeah, it just take a while for me to get used to.
Sure. But I think it's it's probably my favorite mode from
Yeah.
Hardline.
Yeah, it took me a while. Like the first day that I played it, I just kept dying constantly. and
Yeah,
The
yeah.
second day was better. But the other modes I want to talk about are the new 5v5
Sure.
modes.
The
Visceral's sort of
competitive
aiming these at the esports crowd.
Yeah.
So 5v5, super quick, round-based stuff. You have one life.
Right.
There's like a fast objective. It's like you got this. You got to go rescue the hostage and take him to the safe zone.
Yep.
Or like we have a VIP. He's here. He needs to be there.
So those two variants are rescue and crosshair.
Yes.
So rescue, it's sort of like Counter-Strike almost. You go in, you try to rescue the hostages and get out, bring them back to the extraction point. Crosshair is where it's 5v5, except one team has the VIP who's got
it's like a golden
gun,
bald
like
eagle.
James, our video editor, was using it and just like putting on a clinic with this.
It's super powerful.
Yeah.
But those modes sort of, like Battlefield big team games sort of have like a narrative. Like you can almost tell the match as a story when you're done. Like, oh, we took this, the vehicles were, whatever.
We grabbed C, went to B.
Exactly. That doesn't really happen in these modes. This is more about like, oh, we got like one guy left. Can he take out the 4 people that they have?
And it's possible too.
It's totally possible.
I did it once, and I felt like I had the world's strongest boy.
Oh,
I'm the
look
hero,
at you. World's strongest boy. That's your new name.
Yeah. So I took out like the entire team, and it was.
Yeah. Why don't you just tell everyone how good you are?
And it was super rewarding. I'm actually not that.
No,
good.
it's really cool. Again, not really a Battlefield classic type of game, but very, very good.
It works. It fit. I felt like it fit.
And I do want to make a note of the tone of the multiplayer. We're sort of talking about how it's cops versus criminals.
Yes.
It's not like actual cops versus actual criminals. It's this
really
bizarre world. I like to think of it as like if all of the like really loud online gamer kids like grew up and became cops and criminals, like that's what they would be.
Yeah.
So they taunt each other. They like discuss memes and reference them.
Yeah, it's super.
Yeah, like the
internet
Oprah,
culture.
like you get a car. Like there's one of those in there.
I will say Visceral kind of knows who their demographic is.
Sure.
All of this is very much
makes
targeted
sense.
towards internet
It's just
culture.
bizarre.
Yeah.
And then, like, the best thing, that song, like,
Oh, okay.
the sound of the police,
whoop,
whoop, whoop.
It's the sound
like,
of the police.
getting run over by a car that's blaring that.
Yeah, and
is
then
just the best.
You're just laying on the pavement dead, and it's
just like,
driving off, and the song
can't
is
be
slowly
mad.
getting quieter.
Exactly.
Yeah. You
It
can't. The radio stations are great. They have a lot of cool songs that I think really kind of mix it up, and it's just sort of this sense of levity to the game that isn't really in your traditional Battlefields. I mean, Bad Company had it, but that was mostly based off the banter between the squad, right?
Right.
But this really, like, the entire game just kind of feels like, multiplayer anyway, feels like it's been injected with this sense of just like, kind of have fun,
Yeah.
Go out there, drive a fast car.
Exactly.
Flip
Drive a
someone
muscle
off,
car.
shoot
yeah.
someone.
Jump out the window and like start shooting people.
Yeah.
The maps is one thing I want to point out because there aren't a lot. 9 maps is not a lot.
Yeah, it's true.
But I never really felt like I was being restricted too much because the map sort of changes size based on what mode you're on.
So right, that's a strength of Battlefield, right? Is that each map is sort of has a variable size.
Right. And each sort of has its own like choke points and like power areas to be in. So I didn't feel restricted by that. Cool. 9 just seems like a small number to me compared to a lot of shooters. But it wasn't really holding me back.
Yeah, no, I felt a combination of maps and modes were both, were both adequate. Like they were fun. I never felt burnt out really. I never felt exhausted by like having to learn another new map. I think the only other point I'll mention about maps is that that term levolution is back, and it works in
good old evolution.
It works in sort of different tiers for each map. Some of the bigger maps you'll have bigger like dynamic sandstorms that come in, right? Like in Dust Bowl or in downtown, you'll have a crane that smashes into a skyscraper, giving you a new access up. But like smaller ones, like the Block, is an apartment complex. And by the end of the match, just the drywall is blown out of every single wall, so it's just skeletons of apartment buildings.
Yeah, the sort of destruction, the frostbite destruction, you know, that was like the selling point for Bad Company.
Right, fully take a building down to the foundation.
Yeah, it's still important here, but it's not as...
It feels more scripted, almost.
Kind of. It's not as... Like in Battlefield, in Bad Company, you'd shoot a wall. It's like there's a hole that's this big, and I know exactly what it's going to do. And in this game, it like kind of chips away, and there's like the frame underneath, and like there's still plenty of destruction, and it's important, and it opens new routes for you. But it's like dirty. It's like dirty
it does feel
destruction.
grungy and gringier. Gringier.
IGN.com.
IGN.com.
Too much cringe.
Too much cringe. So yeah, I mean, I think single player sounds like it was one of the better upsides to it.
Yeah, don't skip it.
Don't skip it. I had a lot of fun with the multiplayer. I know you did as well. So, yeah.
Yep, gonna go ahead and check back for full impressions.
Yes.
That's gonna go, so we allow, again, up to 48 hours after launch. We're gonna try to do sort of end of day launch day, so like Tuesday night. But
check service
we'll
status, make sure everything's up and running.
Make sure everything's running well.
Slap our final score on it, and then
keep on playing.
Get back into it.
Yeah.
Cool. So for everything Battlefield Hardline, cops, criminals, sounds of the police, you're already in their place. IGN.